Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and of course we're joined by author and economic analyst here at WAM, John Sneisen. Now, we talked a bit about Brazil before, you know, how they put in the shiny Rio Olympics to distract people from what was really happening, shoving people out of their homes, and the manipulation of the monetary system there is pretty bad. I mean, what we're about to talk about is just breaking, and that is that the Brazil Senate has approved a 20-year austerity plan, and John is going to go right into that.
I don't know what to say. Personally, I think austerity, like the term austerity, is a freaking joke. It is so ridiculous because I'll explain exactly what austerity is in very easy terms so everybody can understand, not the bullshit that the academics give you.
Yeah.
Austerity is basically the government has racked up a whole bunch of debt and programs that they wanted to give you so they can make you dependent on them. And then, of course, it comes to a point where it's unsustainable, like it was in Brazil just currently. And then they say, oh, we're going to put in austerity measures where we're going to take the dependent public that we made dependent in the first place by all these policies and welfare programs and so on. And now we're going to take away some of that to make them even beg for more from the state and further let the state do whatever it takes to enslave them so they could go out of the austerity and they don't have to do austerity anymore. Now we know that Brazil is a very corrupt country. They of course had their during the Olympics in Rio. I remember you had the acting president there, which because Dilma Rousseff was indicted for a whole bunch of corrupt activity that she did when she was in power. And then of course now we have got the crony capitalist in place there, which is just completely obliterating the country. And now of course they put in those austerity measures because that's what the crony capitalist likes to do.
I change that to corporatist personally, but absolutely,
exactly.
It's that corporate fascist kind of
corporate
rule.
Fascist. And so what is happening is that these guys, they just voted in 53 to 19 votes. They had a 20-year plan to stop, the massive accumulation of debt and stop the deficit, because that's their problem. Is their deficit is because they actually spend so much more money than they get from taxpayers. Now, actually, a friend of mine that runs the Manitoba part here in the province, I just love his explanation of the deficit. He always asks people, what is the deficit here in Manitoba? And people say, well, it's 5, and now it's 890 million. He said, no, it's $12 billion. It's the actual government is the deficit.
Yeah.
So what we need to understand is this whole thing around austerity is just a plan. It was a plan all along for the government to, first of all, create all these social programs, make you depend on them, and you wanting them. And then, of course, what they do is they say that, oh, well, we spent too much money, so now we have to, take back on some of them while they made you dependent on them. And then they also raise taxes on you on top of that, so now we're getting double whammied and even further enslaved and then easier to control by the government itself.
Absolutely. It's so convenient, and we see that over and over again across the world. I mean, of course, it's a globalist issue, but what we're seeing in Brazil is just another really huge example of how they use good people's good intentions against them. They pretend to come in to help when really they're causing a problem. So we see the Hegelian dialectic of problem, reaction, solution.
Exactly what austerity is.
Yeah, absolutely. So what is the bottom line for the people out in Brazil, and what should they do? I mean, because I feel like people should know better by now. We've seen these kinds of things happen over and over again, and it's amazing that what it takes these days to overthrow a government that's corrupt and trying to run them into complete servitude, run them into the ground.
Well, I think the problem is, Josh, and from talking to Holly Swanson about the Common Core and everything in the United States, it's everywhere in the world currently, the UN and all its little underlying
absolute apathy indoctrinated from childhood.
Yeah, and that is what it is. That's why people are not reacting right now. They went through these indoctrination camps, and now that's what public schools is, my point of view. And what it does, it makes you an obedient government employee or a big corporate employee, and you are taught not to question, and not to have critical thought. They take away that, so now the critical thought is away from a lot of the public in Brazil. Of course, there's people like us in Brazil. I'm very certain of that.
Oh,
There's,
I've met some, yeah.
awake people all over the world. Now, the problem is that the vast amount of the masses are not like aware of this stuff, and that's why we need to continuously go out and educate people that are unaware. This is not, wanting to preach to a choir in Brazil that already knows that something is wrong.
Obviously.
This is to every single person in Brazil that are not aware of what's going on and how these things are underlying issue of the real thing, which is the control that the government wants to implement. You need to basically let the government fail. I think that's almost the only way. Like,
let it collapse
Venezuela,
and then rebuild from scratch as a free market voluntarist society.
I really hope that Venezuela is going to turn to something better after this, but of course, the worst case scenario turns into totalitarian state, which is leaning towards, unfortunately. But we can always hope that, some of these collapses of governments, because we will see a ton of them, especially now in the new like market and debt collapses around the world, like the massive debt apocalypse that's upon us.
We hope it gives some people a lesson, teaches some people a lesson, teaches some people why they need to opt out of this kind of system.
Yeah, the problem is, like, we've had like 2 generations now that have been living like quite wealthy, and they've been rushing onto this debt bubble and feeling wealthy. That's what debt does. When you have the amount, like, the availability of money so easily, everybody could get this debt. The problem is that everybody's not that productive or can create something of value on top of it. So now the problem is, when you got too many people getting into debt, there's not going to be enough people to pay it back. Yeah. And that's where you get all these collapses in government debt and real estate, everything that has to do with debt. It just a massive bubble. And of course, the central bank in Brazil is behind a lot of this stuff as well. And they're just perpetuating the whole thing to try to, like, what they really want to do. And this is, they want to enslave you. That's all that it comes down to. You need to understand that. And then you need to say no, and you need to get together with people. Like, of course, we're individualists, so we don't like the collective, but we need collective action here. We need individualists to stand up together. And I would say to, for example, people that live in Brazil, I'm a part of Freedom Force International. I want to promote that a little bit, because what it does, it takes all these people that want to create a better world for tomorrow, and we could actually work together. We could... on a global scale, work on connecting, and then actively go out there and teach people, because it's not about us wanting to have full control over the system at all. It's just about educating people, as many as we can, before this whole system comes to a totalitarian state.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned teaching people, and as you mentioned before, the school system isn't going to do it. And isn't it interesting that, people aren't really taught about austerity in school? People aren't taught about these things, that these rigged economies, rigged monetary systems, rigged markets. People aren't taught about this in school for a major reason here, which is that it affects people more than almost anything. Like, the fact that probably only about 90 or maybe 5% of people in general actually know what austerity is, and maybe 5% of those people who know what austerity is knows that what needs to happen and why it's happening and what the end goal is. The fact is, very few people in the public know about these issues that affect them the most. And that goes back to the indoctrination for sure. But largely it's the fact that they create this lingo within the monetary world, within the economic
100%.
world, in order to confuse people. It sounds too complicated. So people just go, well, I'll leave it to the experts. I'll leave it for them to figure out. It's too much for me. It's boring. It's difficult. It's mind-numbing.
And will I give them all the power?
And it's in reality, it's pretty simple when you get down to it's the fact that they've made it difficult. They implemented all these things, one thing after another, layer by layer by layer, that becomes hard to break down. But it's the fact that the way it really should be, down to the individual, the free market, and allowing the demand of the individual to count instead of the manipulated demand of the state and the banking system. I mean, that really is the bottom line. And if you can understand that, you can understand why all these things are wrong and why they're trying to use that against you in order to push you into debt. As you mentioned, it will push people into servitude to the state. So thanks, John, and we'll get into this much more in the future. I feel for the people of Brazil. I really want them to stand up. I'm with you. I mean, I live in Canada. We live in Canada. He came from Norway. We all are in these countries.
What you have, so don't worry about that. We're fully understanding. We're not just somebody that are preaching from a high chair, like in a country that has so much better than you. We come from countries that are actually, Norway is actually worse than Brazil because we have massive amounts of taxation. We have a massive amount of debt because the massive amount of taxation causes people not to be able to afford everything. So then they have to go and borrow money. So it's actually in Norway, we have like people going into debt instead of actually going into austerity. Basically.
Yeah. And regardless of any of that, too, on top of it all, no matter where you are in the world, basically every country, we have the unfortunate experience of being manipulated by a system which prints currency out of thin air, fiat paper money. It's not really money. Money needs a store of value. Currency doesn't. They're printing currency out of thin air, which causes devaluation, which ends up with creating debt and inflation on top of that.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, we're all from countries that have experienced this because it's a globalist issue. I mean, it's a global problem that is
almost
taking hold of the world.
Every single place in the world actually has this issue because we have a central bank in our home country. Absolutely. So this is not just a Brazilian problem, a Canadian, Norwegian, or Swedish, or Danish, or American, or a Japanese problem. This is every single country almost in the world's problem.
Absolutely. And with that said, we'll leave you at that, and we will be back at you with much more. Check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated. And of course, check out our offer for Anarchapulco, where you can save 10% on your tickets to Anarchapulco and, of course, Acapulco, Mexico, by typing in promo code WAM. That's WAM. So definitely check out that link. It's a great deal. You save money, we make money. It benefits everyone.
And you could be at a better place than Winnipeg right now, which is minus 35 degrees.
Absolutely. It's cold here. It's really cold, and I wouldn't mind getting the hell out of here. So just check those links, and we'll be back at you with much more. This is Josh Sigurdson, John Sneisen, signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.